ship appeared quietly. There was no military parade, no dramatic launch ceremony, no breaking news alert that stopped the world. And yet, when experts looked closely, many realized they were seeing something extraordinary. Because this was not just another ship. It was a floating machine built to change the future of energy itself. And it came from China. For decades, the world's oceans have been more than just trade routes. They have been battlegrounds, not always for weapons, not always for territory, but increasingly for something just as important: energy. Every modern economy depends on it. Every city, every factory, every data center, every home. Without energy, everything stops. And for more than a century, much of that energy came from coal, oil, and natural gas. But the world is changing. Governments are investing billions into renewable energy. Companies are racing to develop new technologies. Entire industries are being transformed. And nowhere is this transformation more visible than offshore wind power. At first glance, offshore wind farms look simple. A few giant turbines standing in the sea, slowly turning, generating electricity. But the reality is far more complicated. Each turbine is a massive engineering project. The towers can be taller than skyscrapers. The blades can stretch longer than a football field. The foundations weigh thousands of tons. And everything must be transported and assembled far from shore, in rough seas, under changing weather conditions, often in locations where even reaching the site is a challenge. Building these structures requires something very special. Ships unlike anything most people have ever seen. And that is where China's new vessel enters the story. When images of the ship began circulating online, many viewers did not understand what they were looking at. Some thought it was an oil platform. Others assumed it was a drilling vessel. A few even mistook it for a military project. But experts immediately recognized its significance. Because the ship represented something much larger than itself. It represented capability, the ability to build the future. See, the vessel was enormous. Its deck carried cranes powerful enough to lift structures weighing thousands of tons. Its legs could extend downward and anchor the ship above the water, transforming it from a floating vessel into a stable offshore construction platform. This process is known as jack-up operation. Once positioned, the ship literally lifts itself above the waves. The ocean moves beneath it, but the platform remains steady, creating a safe environment for precision construction work. It sounds simple. It is not. The engineering required is staggering. Ocean currents, wind, wave height, structural stress. Everything must be calculated. Everything must work perfectly, because even small errors become dangerous when handling equipment of this size. And the turbines themselves continue growing larger every year. That trend has changed the industry. A decade ago, offshore wind turbines seemed huge. Today they appear modest. New designs are reaching unprecedented scales. Some towers exceed 200 meters in height. Some blades stretch farther than the wingspan of large passenger aircraft. Each new generation demands bigger ships, stronger cranes, more advanced logistics, and fewer countries possess those capabilities than many people realize. This is one reason the ship attracted attention. Not because it was merely large, but because it demonstrated a level of industrial capacity that cannot be developed overnight. Building such a vessel requires years of planning, specialized shipyards, advanced manufacturing, highly trained engineers, massive financial investment, and a long-term strategy. The ship became evidence of something much larger. Evidence that China was positioning itself at the center of one of the world's fastest-growing industries. For many observers, this raised important questions. Why invest so heavily in offshore wind? Why build vessels of this scale? Why now? The answers lead far beyond the ship itself. They lead into a global competition unfolding across oceans around the world. Because offshore wind is no longer viewed as a niche technology. It is increasingly seen as critical infrastructure. Countries want energy independence. They want stable electricity supplies. They want reduced reliance on imported fuels. And offshore wind offers a path toward those goals. Unlike land-based projects, offshore installations can take advantage of stronger and more consistent winds. That means more electricity, greater efficiency, and larger energy output. But there is a catch. The farther offshore turbines move, the harder they become to build. That challenge has created a race, not merely to build turbines, but to build the ships capable of installing them. And that race is becoming increasingly competitive. Europe pioneered much of the offshore wind industry. Many of the world's earliest projects were built there. European companies developed technologies that shaped the sector. European shipbuilders created specialized vessels. European engineers solved difficult challenges. For years, Europe dominated the field. Then something changed. China entered the competition, and it entered at extraordinary speed. New factories appeared. New shipyards expanded. New projects multiplied. Investments surged. The pace surprised many analysts. The scale surprised even more. Soon, some of the largest offshore wind developments on Earth were being built in Chinese waters. And those projects required increasingly advanced installation vessels. The ship in the story emerged from that environment. Product of ambition, product of strategy, a product of industrial momentum. To supporters, it represented progress, innovation, economic growth, cleaner energy. To critics, it represented something else, a warning, evidence that global competition was accelerating, evidence that technological leadership was shifting, evidence that future energy markets might be shaped by new players. And that is where the story becomes far more interesting, because history shows that infrastructure often changes power. Railroads changed power, oil changed power, shipping changed power, electricity changed power, the internet changed power. Now many believe energy infrastructure will help define the next chapter of global influence. Who builds it? Who controls it? Who exports it? Who profits from it? These questions matter, and they matter on a massive scale. That is why industry leaders watched the vessel so closely. That is why analysts discussed it. That is why headlines appeared around the world. Not because the ship was a weapon, but because it represented something potentially more important. Capability, the ability to create systems that others depend upon. And in the modern world, that kind of capability often determines who leads and who follows. The vessel became a symbol of technological ambition, a symbol of industrial power, and perhaps a symbol of the future itself. Because while most people were focused on the ship, others were looking beyond it. They were asking a much bigger question. If China can build ships like this today, what will it be capable of building tomorrow? And that question may be the real reason the world was shocked. The question is no longer whether offshore wind will grow. The question is who will dominate it. That distinction matters, because history has repeatedly shown that the industries shaping the future often determine which nations gain influence. The ship we have been discussing is not simply a construction vessel. It is part of a much larger system, a system involving ports, factories, supply chains, engineering firms, research institutions, financial investment, and government planning. Together, these elements form an industrial ecosystem, and ecosystems are difficult to replicate. That is one reason many experts paid close attention when China began expanding its offshore capabilities. The vessel itself was impressive, but the infrastructure supporting it was perhaps even more significant. Large offshore turbines require enormous quantities of steel, massive manufacturing facilities, specialized transportation networks, advanced electronics, precision engineering. Every component must arrive at the right place, at the right time, in the right sequence. A single delay can cost millions of dollars. The larger the project becomes, the more complex the logistics become. and modern offshore wind farms are becoming enormous. Some contain hundreds of turbines, stretching across vast sections of ocean, generating electricity for entire regions. Seen from space, some projects appear almost like artificial cities at sea. Each one represents years of planning, years of investment, years of construction, and increasingly, nations are viewing these projects through a strategic lens. Energy has always been linked to national security. Countries that depend heavily on imported fuel often face vulnerabilities. Supply disruptions, price shocks, political pressure, economic instability. Renewable energy does not eliminate those challenges entirely, but it can reduce them, and that makes offshore wind attractive, particularly for nations with long coastlines and growing energy demands. China recognized this opportunity early. Its energy consumption is enormous. Its economy requires vast amounts of electricity, and its leaders understand the risks associated with energy dependence. The result has been a sustained push toward diversification. Solar power expanded rapidly. Wind power expanded rapidly. Hydroelectric projects grew. Nuclear capacity increased. And offshore wind became one piece of a much larger strategy. The ship featured in this story exists because of that strategy. Without long-term planning, such vessels would never be built. They require confidence. Confidence that future projects will justify the investment. Confidence that demand will continue growing. Confidence that the industry will remain important for decades. That confidence appears to exist, not only in China, but around the world. Yet growth also creates competition, and competition creates tension. As offshore wind expanded, other nations began asking difficult questions. Would they remain leaders? Would they fall behind? Would critical technologies become concentrated in a small number of countries? Could future supply chains become dependent on foreign manufacturers? These concerns are not unique to renewable energy. Similar debates have occurred in semiconductor manufacturing, telecommunications, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and many other industries. Whenever a technology becomes strategically important, governments pay attention. The offshore sector is no exception. This is where the story becomes more than an engineering story. It becomes a geopolitical story, because large infrastructure projects influence economic relationships. They influence investment flows. They influence industrial development. And they influence future opportunities. A nation capable of designing turbines, manufacturing components, building installation vessels, and constructing offshore projects possesses significant advantages. Each advantage reinforces the others, creating a cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to challenge. Some analysts describe this as industrial momentum. Once it begins, it can accelerate quickly, and momentum is exactly what observers believe they are seeing. The vessel became a symbol of that momentum, a visible reminder that industrial competition continues evolving, not through military conflict, but through engineering, manufacturing, innovation, and scale. That may sound less dramatic than battleships and fighter jets, yet the consequences can be equally significant. The industries dominating tomorrow's economy are being built today, often quietly, often outside public attention, and often far from major cities. Sometimes they are built at sea. The average person may never hear the names of these vessels. They may never visit an offshore wind farm. They may never realize how much infrastructure exists beyond the horizon. Yet those projects help power homes, charge vehicles, run businesses, and support modern life. The ship is part of that hidden world. A world most people never see, but one that increasingly shapes the future. Perhaps that is why the vessel captured so much attention. It challenged assumptions. Many people still associate industrial dominance with older industries: oil, coal, heavy manufacturing, traditional shipping. Yet new industries are emerging. and nations that position themselves early often gain significant advantages. China appears determined to be one of those nations. Whether that strategy succeeds completely remains uncertain. Challenges remain, costs remain, technical obstacles remain, environmental concerns remain, economic conditions can change, political priorities can shift, markets can fluctuate. Nothing is guaranteed, but the trajectory is clear. The race is underway, and ships like this are helping define its outcome. When historians look back on this period, they may not focus on a single vessel. They may focus on what it represented. A moment when offshore infrastructure moved from a niche industry into a central component of global energy strategy. A moment when nations began competing not only for resources beneath the ocean, but also for the ability to harness the power above it. The wind itself. That shift may prove more important than many people realize today, because the future will not be shaped solely by who possesses energy. It may also be shaped by who can build the systems that produce it. And in that race, engineering capability matters. Industrial capability matters. Infrastructure matters. The vessel standing above the waves represents all three. It is not a warship. It does not carry missiles. It does not patrol contested waters. Yet it has still managed to attract global attention. Because power takes many forms. Sometimes power comes from weapons. Sometimes it comes from wealth. Sometimes it comes from technology. And sometimes it comes from the ability to build what others cannot. That may be the real reason the world was shocked. Not because of the ship itself, but because of what the ship revealed. A glimpse into the future. A future being constructed far beyond the shoreline. One turbine, one platform, and one extraordinary vessel at a time.